So I've had the Apple iPhone Air for around 2 months and I have changed my mind. So what is up guys, Nick here helping you to master your technology. Now I've had the iPhone Air since it launched and I've said a few things about the cons of this phone since having it. And I even remember saying that I wasn't going to use it over the iPhone 17 Pro Max. But I actually have switched over to this recently because I wanted to give this a more of a proper run. I've been off and on using it here and there over the past couple of months, but I do want to state that I've changed my thoughts about this after using it as an actual daily phone here. So let me go ahead and talk about some of the things that I changed my mind about. Number one is I have recently been talking a lot about how I like the soft corners of the 17 Pro Max, the soft aluminum, but I gotta state, I think I just like titanium more that we find on here. It seems to be a little bit more durable. This phone is also to me a little bit less easy to drop. It's a little grippier. I don't know why that is. Maybe because the edges are polished. I don't know. It just feels grippier to hold than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. But overall, the titanium material to me just feels more premium, looks nicer, and overall just kind of reminds me of some of the previous iPhones with the titanium. However, this is like a jet black color right here, so it definitely looks very good. We do have, you know, on the edges at least, it looks kind of jet black. The back, more like a space black here. In this area, this black option, definitely very polished. I do like that quite a bit. The overall design and look of this phone to me is really a stunner. It's the best looking iPhone design, I think, change since the iPhone 10. A lot of people overlook that, but the fact of the matter is it seems like aesthetics and beauty aren't really hitting with people as much as function and form does. So bigger batteries, bigger screens seems to be in this current state in 2025. A lot of people are more about how much battery life, how much screen, you know, basically function over aesthetics. Like they see phones as this thing to use, and if it's not giving them the best battery or the best screen, then they're probably like, I'm not paying that much. So I get where you're coming from, but to me this phone is still one gorgeous piece of technology and probably the best Apple's done. If you see down here, they do have, you know, a USB-C, and it's crammed in there so tightly that like it barely had enough room to reach in there. Same with the camera control. The frame is so thin that they basically barely could get that camera control in there. And that's why this is such an impressive feat of technology, because, you know, being able to have a phone this thin while still having the A19 Pro chip in there, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and understand they don't have the same thermals is rather nice. I would like to see, though, 2 cameras on the next edition. But overall, I've changed my mind about the overall looks and build. I did talk about how it was great, but I've just been digging the titanium quite a bit over aluminum. So I've been loving the thinness of this phone. The reason why is not really coming down to that other phones are too heavy to use. It really just comes down to how easy this phone is to grip because of that. It just kind of sits in the hand, super easy to hold. Like you feel like you have a secure grip on it because of that. It's just easy to hold this device. I don't know other way to put it. So the thinness factor also to me looks very sleek. It also matches up very nicely with the iPad Pro 11-inch that I got. So if you have an 11-inch iPad Pro like the M4, M5, this goes very, very well with that product. And it just looks sleek. I also do like how when you place a case on this phone, it tends to still be rather thin. So let me go ahead and place a case on here. This is just a cheapy TPU. But even when you place a case on this phone, it still retains quite a bit of thinness. This phone is still thinner than most other iPhones, even with a case on it. Also, this area up at the top, this camera bar looking thing up here, if you go ahead and place your finger here, it kind of gives you a space to go ahead and hold and grip the phone. So that's just some ergonomic thing I noticed. Just pretty easy to put my finger right there so I don't like drop it. Kind of reminds me of like those pop sockets when you have somewhere to put your finger. You can just kind of use that to rest it right there, kind of like that. Instead of like other phones sometimes, like for a 17 Pro Max, sometimes I'll be like holding it, touching the cameras, getting my finger smudges all over the camera. So I definitely found that to be a little bit useful. Now with the case, this phone also doesn't rock at all on the table just because of the way it sits up on that hump up there. But at the same time, let's go ahead. When it's not in a case, which is the way a lot of people with the Air will be using this phone, there's a little bit of rock up there in the left. Just something to point out right there. Now, in reality, the next thing is the lightness. Now, the lightness has led to this phone being so much better for portable use. You don't really think about it too much until you're actually using this day to day, but this phone doesn't make your hand feel any type of way. Like when you're using a heavy phone for a long time, you got to switch hands because it's so big, the device. This one you could use one hand pretty much all day, but what I like about this phone is that it still has a max size screen. Remember guys, the iPhone XS Max, 11 Pro Max was the max phone in the past, and it had this size screen, a 6.5. So if I'm not comparing it side by side, I still feel like I'm using a pretty large display day to day. Even some people have mentioned that the Air screen is a little too big. If it was smaller, they might have considered this phone. But for me, I definitely love the size. I think it sits right in between the 6.3 and right in between the 6.9. So maybe even 6.7. So you definitely, you're right on that cusp of not too small, not too big. I think it's a great size display, and it's kind of a nice sweet spot. I really do enjoy the 6.5. I really want to see a second edition of this phone, mostly with a dual camera. That's something I want to see with this device. So I hope they continue on with that. We are seeing reports that we might not see thin phones make their return, but it would be nice to see a second gen of the iPhone Air. And I think we will see that. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I have to talk about the camera because it's been a big topic point of contention with the iPhone Air. But for me, it kind of comes down to this. The camera on the iPhone Air is the camera you need, but it's the camera your brain doesn't want to admit that you do, that is mostly what you use. What I mean by that? Well, most people were fine before ultra wide angle cameras came out. This is not a justification for not having it. I'm just saying how I feel about using this. I didn't really care about it until it came on the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max. The zoom. The 10x zoom is already on like base 16s and stuff like that. So to me, that's enough zoom. I think it really just comes down to the ultra wide. But in reality, I think most people are getting the best photo results they need from the single camera anyway. So let's go over here and go to the front facing camera. This also has the same front facing camera that you can find on the other models. So it doesn't really feel like a downgrade there either. At the end of the day, you're getting the best lens on here anyway, and I find that the camera, I changed my mind about it. It's just not going to do it for a single. I think it will do it for most people. They just don't want to admit it because it kind of just doesn't look the part, because all of the other phones do have triple cameras and stuff like that. But how often are you actually using all of those triple cameras? You really have to weigh that on for yourself, how much you're actually using it. For me, I mostly, when I make my videos with the iPhone, I'm mostly only using the main camera anyway. When I'm taking photos, I'm only mostly zooming in a little bit or using the main camera. The ultra wide comes into play only very rarely. So while I do want to see a second camera on here in the future, this is not a deal breaker for using the current iPhone Air, I feel like. Here's one that's actually more surprising than you might think. Yes, the battery life on paper has been definitely not looking as good as the spec sheet of some other iPhones, specifically the Maxes and the main Pros. However, this phone is still giving battery life that is on whole day for me. And I'm using it kind of medium to heavy, so this is not a problem. It really just isn't. It's only a problem in the comparison mindset when you start comparing it to what you can get for the same money. But see, you have to keep in mind, to me, this is the phone that, you might look at and be like, that is sleek, I want that device. But your brain logistically goes, no, there's one with a bigger battery. Let me just get that one. But you might have still wanted this one just because it's sleek design, its looks, its feel in hand. And you probably might have just got something else because you were scared of the battery. But I've changed my mind. The battery life on here has been more than enough. And honestly, how long are you away from a charger? That does really matter. If you are the type of person who is not going to be able to get to a charger majority of the day, which I don't know if there's that many people that are, then that's going to be a problem. But there's battery packs. There's chargers in your car. even if you're on the job site or you're at school or something like that, you're not going to be able to be on your phone heavy all day to the point where it's going to drain this entirely down. If you have bad charging habits, though, this probably is not going to be the phone for you. But for anybody who has, pretty good charging habits and they have multiple chargers, they have a charger in the car, battery packs, wireless charger at home, chargers in the wall, you're going to be fine. This is just not the end of the world. And honestly, this is better than a lot of the older iPhones were on battery and people were buying those. And we don't even think about that too much now, do we? The next one is, I love that this iPhone got the 12 gigabytes of RAM and the Apple A19 Pro chip. It has really made this phone fly on the day-to-day. This device has 4.25 gigahertz clock speed, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it could basically run just like a 17 Pro Max. Sans, it does get a little bit better performance on the 17 Pro Max if you are pushing a game a little bit long. So if you're doing a longer gaming session, this will hit the battery pretty good on the Air. And it might not sustain its performance in an extended session, but I have had yet to make this phone crash, lag, anything like that. It just doesn't do it. This thing is powerful. They just gave you the same chip you're going to get in the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Think of it like the M4 MacBook Air and the M4 MacBook Pro. Yes, the M4 MacBook Pro is definitely going to be faster because it has the fans and it's a little bit more meatier when it comes to that type of area. However, most people know that the M4 Air can still get the job done, and it almost feels the same identical performance as the Pro for the most part. That's the Air in the iPhone lineup. That's kind of how it feels to me, the iPhone Air. So it's just not a problem. You're still getting that same M4 chip, but for this case, you're still getting that same A19 Pro chip, if you get what I'm saying. The next thing is that it just feels different, bro. Like, this is something you can't tangibly talk about. You have to go feel it for yourself, use it for yourself. Yes, the Cosmic Orange looks different as well in the colorway, but the actual body and feel of the 17 Pro Max is kind of still similar to what we're used to. The iPhone Air has just been something that feels so new and different. And I think that because it didn't take off, it's kind of a little bit sad because finally this actually feels like a different product. It reminds me a lot of when Apple made the iPad Pro extremely thin and light with OLED. This phone right here has those traits, that just special feel to it. Yes, it's probably more of a tech enthusiast thing, but it's definitely a special feeling phone. And so this doesn't really matter, but the iPhone Air has been more of a conversation starter than any other iPhone that I've seen in the past several years. People say, what is that? Is that the iPhone Air? More conversations have been started when I'm using this phone. More conversations have been started when using this phone than any other iPhone over the past several years. So that's just something, if you like to talk about devices and you like when people say, well, what is that? If that's something you care about, I mean, I don't really care about it too much, but if that's something you care about, you like talking about tech and you want your phone to start a conversation, especially the other colors, maybe not the black, but the other colors are a little bit more vibrant in your face. The Air definitely is a conversation piece. And here's another great thing about the iPhone Air. The display is equally as bright as the other panels, and it's also equally as smooth. So the ProMotion lends to an extremely smooth overall experience. While being outdoors, this phone is actually brighter than some of the previous Pro models. So you actually have traits over this that are actually better than previous Pro models. So this phone definitely has a display that you're looking for the long haul. You're definitely going to really enjoy this, especially outdoors. So the single speaker up here hasn't been as much of an issue for me personally because I use AirPods Max, AirPods Pro, and I would wager a lot of people are using their headphones anyway these days. So is it really a problem? Only if you rely or use your phone as a Bluetooth speaker or use it as a speakerphone. But most phones don't sound better than Bluetooth speakers to begin with. So if you really want to do external audio, you might as well just get a cheap, strong Bluetooth speaker. It's going to sound much better than a phone anyway. This is not a justification for not having two speakers. All I'm trying to say is that I've changed my mind. It really doesn't make the phone not a good phone because AirPods connect super fast and AirPods are a better experience, I think, anyway, for privacy reasons, listening to your audio the way you want to listen to it anyway. And so That's the bottom line. It's not, and it's not like the speaker's trash or something. It works. It's fine. Like it's not garbage. It's just one, so it doesn't sound as a stereo sounding, if that makes sense. So this phone, yes, it has had some teething issues. It needs a couple of upgrades to make it more popular, including a little bit better battery and ultra wide camera. And I think a lot more people would be 100% on board with this phone, because I think there's more people that want to admit that they would like a phone that feels light. They just don't like a phone that they think they got to sacrifice battery and camera for. That's something they're not about to do. And that's why I think it hasn't got as much praise as it might rightfully deserve. At the end of the day, no one asked for this phone, but no one has asked for the original iPhone when it came out either, or maybe a few people. But innovative products definitely are never really asked for. They're the type of thing that you don't know you need until it comes out. You know what I'm saying? Like the Fold. Now everybody is starting to think about an iPhone Fold. When the Z Folds came out, everybody was like, nobody needs a folding phone. No one. Now look at everybody. Everybody is waiting to see what Apple does with the iPhone Fold. If that phone does come true, that's what people are waiting for. But just a few years ago, everybody's like, I don't need no dang Fold. Who needs a folding phone? Creases, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just saying, like, sometimes the products that come out, they hit, sometimes they don't. But I think that this one definitely feels innovative. And I think it's kind of a test too, to see how thin they can make the phone. It could probably lead into a thinner, they could use some of the technologies they use to make this, to make a thinner iPhone folding device as well. But finally, we have something thin and light, and it seems that it's not getting all the love and the praise. But I've changed my mind after using it. It's one of those devices that it doesn't shine on camera. It's hard to convince through a video if it's a good device. It's one of those devices that the people who actually buy it and own it and use it start to enjoy for the intangibles, like the experience of holding it day to day, the thin light factor, how they could use it all day without it feeling like some bulky thing in their pocket. Having a very minimal aesthetic kind of goes with the minimal vibes of maybe some of their other products. And it definitely just feels different. So at the end of the day, I think it's pretty solid. Let me know your thoughts on the iPhone Air now that it's been out for a couple of months. Are you changing your drift? Are you not? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Drop some comments down below. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.